All right, in our introduction to this project, we made our own emojis. Here is the goal. We're going to turn that into our own custom use of shapes, right, to represent the theme we choose. Here are some professional examples of it. It's used in graphic design and in our communicative digital world all the time, not just for logo design, but for illustrations, for what's called visual communication. And then we'll learn how we can take those simple flat colored shapes, which are the most basic type of vector design, and turn them into more nuanced versions, which is called Flat 2.0, using things like drop shadows, gradients. So this is very basic, right? Even this is fairly basic. They're all just flat, single pixel color shapes. So our next step is to open up that screen grab or that raster image that we got from the emoji maker. Open it up in Photopea or Photoshop. So this is the Photoshop class, so I'm going to open one up in Photoshop. And I'm going to open up the other one in Photopea. And in Photopea, I'm going to open up the PNG that I downloaded from the website, just so you can see the difference. And in Photoshop, it's the screen grab I got, which is a little bit higher resolution. So what is the difference? If you download a PNG, you'll see no background. You'll see that checkerboard because it supports transparency. But if you do a screen grab of something you find online, even if it's higher resolution, because those actual shapes are vectors like typefaces, the more you zoom in on them, the cleaner they get. It's also going to capture the background. Because this is a sketch to build on top of, build our own shapes on top of, it doesn't matter which one you use, but what does matter is that we change it to the right pixel resolution for printing. So for this project, we are going to use vector shape tools. So it actually doesn't matter what resolution we have, because those vectors will match any resolution we choose, right? But it can only show us the pixels at the resolution we set. So we're going to keep the same standards we did for the last exercise. At least 8 by 10 inches, at least 300 pixels per inch. But instead of dragging this on to a new file, what you're going to do is to show that you understand image size. I'll do it first in Photoshop by going to Image, Image Size, looking at the information that's there. That's from my screen grab. Notice that a screen grab is always going to be 72 pixels per inch, or it's going to be whatever the pixel resolution of the screen is, which the standard is 72, by whatever inches, right? So to change this, I need to resample it because I need the computer to make up more pixels. Because I don't want it to be 72, I want it to be at least 300. And instead of 10 by 9, which is fine, maybe I want it to be, well, maybe I want it to be 8 by 10. Or close to 8 by 10, at least 8 by 10. So if I change the 10, it will change to 8.98 because that's closest to this aspect ratio. So keep that padlock there, keep that chain link. That makes it so it doesn't stretch or warp. Remember that this is inches and this is pixels per inch. Then we say okay. And it gets a whole lot bigger. And notice that though these were pixels that were really clean, now the computer gives it kind of this blurry contrasted edge because the computer made up those pixels. Okay, that's Photoshop. Let's do the same thing in Photopea. Go to Image, Image Size. And I'm going to change it from pixels to inches. And I'm going to set it to be 8 inches wide. Click off of it and it will automatically put in the height. I'm going to have resample checked and I'm going to put it in at 300 pixels per inch. Click off of it, make sure all that stays, and then say OK. Grows it, makes it a whole lot bigger. I can do Command 0 to fit it on the screen. Now the reason the screen grab's slightly better is you can see how fuzzy those shapes are when you take a really low resolution and force it up to that size. Whereas this one's a little bit cleaner, though still a little fuzzy. But it doesn't matter because this is a layer that's going to get turned off by the time we're done. This is our guideline layer though. So what we're doing is we're going to replace this shape this vector image with our own shapes by building them up step by step. So find your first biggest basic shape. So for this one, it's a big red circle, right? For my monkey, let's do a brown circle. And we're going to go right to near the bottom of the tools. And you're going to go 3 up. These are your vector shape tools. These are not raster tools. These are vector tools. In fact, everything at the bottom of Photoshop here relates to vectors, including type design or the pen tool. If I want to make a circle or an oval, I choose the ellipse. And then, just like if I was making a selection, I'm going to drag and drop to choose the size of that shape. And you can change it later, you can transform it. I'm just going to make a long oval like that. The color it chooses comes from your foreground color, but you can always change it. But what you want to notice is as soon as I let go, it made a new layer with this vector signifier in it, which makes it a smart object. So this is what's called a vector smart object. And it has a transform box, which immediately allows me to stretch it without having to hold down Shift or rotate it, right? Or even right-click within it and rasterize it. But I never want to do that, because if I rasterize it, it's no longer a vector. So the rules for this assignment are that you can only use vector tools within Photoshop or Photopea, and you never can rasterize them. So they always stay vector layers. That way, when you open up this Photopea or Photoshop document, you can make it any size you want, and it will always be perfectly clean. You can make an emoji the size of a billboard, and it will be perfectly clean. But if you rasterize it, it will be limited to that size, because that's raster instead of vector. Okay, how do I change the color? Vectors have properties that are different than raster layers. So change the color, all you have to do is double click on that vector shape layer window. And it will go to a color selector. I can choose the color from this menu. Slide up and down here, slide around here. But whenever you get a color selector, you can also just move off of it and you get the eyedropper tool. And anything that's open in the program you can steal from. So I can match that color exactly. And then what have I done so far? I say, okay, I've made my first vector shape. Now I'm going to layer on top of that with a new one. What about the inside of his face? I'm going to make another oval. And I just drag and drop again. And it will create a new oval on a new layer, but I'm going to change that color and I'm going to make it match this ear color, right? And then I'm going to say okay, use the move tool, move it over. Now, if I want to change this shape, I can do more than just use the transform tools that are there. I can always hit Command T and free transform it, even though it's a vector, just like I did with my line art in the last project. So you're going to be using warp a lot for this to customize your shapes. Right? So I'm going to save it there. And I'm going to save it by hitting Command S, right? Or you can do File, Save As. And I'm going to say my name dash exercise number 2 Aesop's vector shape emoji. You need your name and a description. And it's going to save to my exercise 2 folder, or I can always just say Command D, save it to the desktop, which until you're used to file organization, I recommend. I'm going to mark it green, and then I'm going to move it into my folder, right? The right folder, exercise 2. And that green PSD is where we're going to pick it up next class. And if you want to play with it in Photopea, you simply open up Photopea, and you bring that PSD in. You can say File, Open up that PSD, and continue working on it. And you'll see the vector shapes are the same deal in Photo P. If I want to do a rectangle, add it. If I want to change its color, I double click there. I can pick a color, or I can use the color selector. Right. And I can use Option Command T, and I can modify it. You just need the option because Command T gives you a new browser window. All right. So I can close this now. I know it's saved as a PSD. I can close this work. I know I've saved them. If you haven't saved it, it will warn you before you save it. Do you want to update it? And sure, why not? And then you want to log out of anything you're logged into, except for the computer, because these computers are not your own login. Make sure everything's organized, and then you want to plug in your thumb drive. Like so. You plug it into the back of your computer for the fastest connection. You'll see it pop up. And then you are going to take your folder from your desktop where you have all of your updated files, and you're going to drag that folder right onto your thumb drive. And because that folder matches a folder that's already there, it's going to ask you if you want to replace it or merge it, right? The fastest option is going to be to merge it, because that will copy only the newer files on. And so it will automatically update that whole folder. I don't know why it's taking a while. I might be overtaxing my laptop a little bit, but that is the way you can kind of back up your work. The goal is to always have it saved in two places, in the lab computer and on a thumb drive. And if you want to use it on other devices, then you can. All right. Next class will be turning those in. Feel free to play with that and work on that as you like. But remember, the priority is to get exercise 1 submitted by midnight tonight. And I'm here